Well, hello again. Welcome back to part 2 of my dive. I don't want to call it a deep dive, my dive into my post-processing workflow for how I took my shots from the chapel at St Aldhelm's Head and changed them from this into this. Hope you'll enjoy. Okay. Long pause there. It's the next day actually, but I'm back, and what we're going to do, we could just leave it there and we've got, you know, reasonably acceptable shot there, particularly bearing in mind I had no special settings for the foreground. We had just one shot and it was shot with 10,000 ISO level on the camera, and so all in all, given all of those parameters, it's actually not a bad outcome. But let's take a look at what we can do if we go that extra mile and we shoot a few more images and we spend a bit more time on the post-processing. Great, so the next thing that we're going to look at is how does it change things if instead of processing one image of the sky, we want to make use of all the extra data that we have available to us, and instead we use, say, let's take 16 images and send all of those through some special software to get the most out of the sky that we can. So we're going to use something called Starry Landscape Stacker, and let's see what of a difference that makes. So let's go back to our software here and images from the other night. And what we're going to do is we're going to find a series of images where we've got some good clear sky, and to save time now, I'm not going to do the initial image processing at this point because I've shown you a little bit about how to do that, but I will just briefly explain how I prepare images for for sending to Starry Landscape Stacker. You'll see here that I haven't used any masks, so I'm going to turn masks off. I'm in a develop module of Lightroom, but I have made some basic changes here in the develop module to the exposure. I've done some brightness changes there, I've upped the contrast, I've reduced the highlights, I've left the shadows, I've left the blacks, I've increased the whites a bit. So highlights down, whites are up. I've added a little bit of clarity and a little bit of dehaze. So those alterations should sound fairly familiar because I went through those earlier as well. And then when it comes to the detail tab, I have left in there some level of sharpening. But when it comes to noise reduction, I haven't done any changes to the luminance noise reduction because I'm going to rely on Starry Landscape Stacker to do that side of things for me. Let's choose here. I'm going to go back into the library module and I'm going to choose from this image here, number 166, right through to this image here. Actually, let's choose another. Let's go as far as this one, I think. So I'm going to take these settings and we're going to synchronize them in the develop module. Synchronize, sync everything. Go back to library. So from there to there, all of these we're going to export them now and we're going to send them to Starry Landscape Stacker in a moment. So go to export And what we're going to do is we're going to export these as 16-bit TIFF files. And we're going to set up a folder specifically for this, St Aldhelm's SLS for Starry Landscape Stacker. That'll do. And we're going to call these St Aldhelm's Chapel exports TIFFs 16-bit, and off they go. So we're going to open Starry Landscape Stacker. Okay, so Starry Landscape Stacker has opened this up, and its job now is to detect the sky in this area of the image, and it's put a red dot where it thinks there is a star. And so I'm going to just tell it at this point to try and find the sky. And then I'm going to give it a little bit of extra help there by painting in with the cursor here those areas of sky that it hasn't detected. And rather than put you through all of this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get it done, and then when I'm all sorted I'll come back and show you the outcome of that. Okay, great. So Starry Landscape Stacker now knows where the sky is, and we're going to tell it to align and make a composite image from all of those shots. Okay, so what this clever software has done is it's taken all of those 15 images, in fact. It's found the stars in the sky that we've said this is the sky area in each of them, and it has realigned all of those stars. It's separated the foreground out from all of that, and it's used the information from all 15 shots to reduce the noise both in the sky and in the foregrounds. Okay, so I'm going to tell it to save current image. I'll save it in the same place so we know where to get it from. And once it's done that, we can close down Starry Landscape Stacker because its job is done. And I'll go back to import. Let's just get my keywords here. Right, import. From our temporary stills section, Starry Landscape Stacker. We only want to bring back in that one. Make sure that we store it in the same place as all the other ones. Add it to our collection and import. Going to develop, so it's brought that in now. And so I think we can see straight away that there is a lot less noise in the sky here now than there were on the individual shots. I'll bring one of the individual ones up and I'll just show you how that compares. So this is image number 774, zoomed in to 100% before we sent the images away to Starry Landscape Stacker, and this is after. And so you can see there's definitely a lot less noise in there. What it's also done is that it has eliminated things like aircraft trails, satellite trails, that kind of stuff as well. So it's given us a little bit more now to work with. So let's go back to fit that to the screen. And I'm just going to do a little bit more fiddling. We're going to add a little bit more clarity to it again, a little bit more dehaze. I actually quite like that colour there. I don't want to go too far because we'll get a bit too much vignetting. So I'm faced with a choice again. I'm going to create a virtual copy of this to work on. And this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and select our sky, same as I did before. And right, I'm just going to invert it actually, and we're going to use that to work on the foreground here. So we're going to increase the overall, there we go, overall exposure, a little bit more on the shadows, that's way too much, and a bit more on the whites, drop the highlights quite a bit, and the grass looks a lot more natural now than it did before, but I don't want to make the grass much lighter than that. If we do, you'll see what happens. It's too green. It's unnaturally green for a nighttime image. So we don't want to increase our exposure too high. It's up by pretty much 2 whole stops there. Okay. Maybe increase the shadows, but take the whites down again. And just play with these sliders until you feel comfortable with that outcome. And if you really wanted to, you could make another mask to separate out the grass from the building, for example. Okay, and actually that colour of the building is fairly close to what I think I was seeing there. I could take the white balance down and make it a little bit more blue, and then maybe take a little bit of magenta out of it. No, I think actually it was probably okay. The tint was probably okay. Right, so that's one approach, and one more approach. We're still working there with the foreground and the sky are still coming from the same set of images. But what if I really want to improve the foreground a lot further? So the way that you need to do that, it starts in the field, and you need to take your foreground shots separately with the foreground in mind, with the post-processing in mind. So on this set of shots, if I just bring up some of my foreground detail shots, and I'll explain how I shot those. Okay, now bear in mind here that these were shot with the intention of light painting the foreground to incorporate later on, and so only those parts of the foreground that I had illuminated in any given frame are what you're going to see here. And I don't want the stars to show in this shot, and the reasons for that will become apparent. So I took each frame at 10 seconds. It says f2, that's not correct. It's because it's a manual lens, it's not electronic in any way, it's not feeding information back. They're actually shot at f5.6 and an ISO of 800. So 10 seconds, f5.6 and ISO 800. So not nearly enough light to capture anything other than a little bit of the very brightest stars, but enough to capture my torchlight as I wandered around in the foreground, shining my torchlight here, there and everywhere. And I haven't done anything with these images yet at all, and in fact I'm not going really to do anything with these images other than take them and the background that I've just created and send them all together over into Photoshop, where the next thing part of this process will begin. So everything that looks like it might be a foreground, so from this one here through to this one here, together with 774, that's it, so, etc. All of these, right click, edit in as layers in Photoshop. Great. Okay, so everything is now in Photoshop, and what I'm going to do, the image of the sky that I want to use, I'm going to duplicate that layer just in case I mess things up. We're going to take that duplicate, we're going to put it right down the bottom, and in fact what we're going to do next is we're going to go up to Select, Sky. Okay, and that's good enough for this purpose. So Photoshop has selected the sky, and I'm going to apply a mask to that. And so what it's done is the sky is visible, but the foreground is not visible. So if I make only that frame show, hold down Alt, press the I, then you see basically we just have got the sky with that mask. But what we want actually, what we really want is the inversion of that mask. So I'm going to invert it. So that's Command I on the Mac. And I'm going to take that mask and apply it to the layer below. And then I'm going to move that sky all the way down to the bottom. Okay. So if now what we do is we just show the top layer, then we're only seeing the foreground. And we're going to take all of this mask, and we're going to apply it to all of these layers. Hold down Alt and drag that mask to the next layer and keep doing that all the way down. I'll come back to you when they're all done. Right, okay, so I appreciate that having loaded all of those in, applied the mask to all of the foreground layers, it now looks like a bit of a dog's steer, but this is where some of Richard Tatty's magic is going to happen, because all of this rubbish and clutter that is up here in the sky is going to magically disappear with a couple of clicks of the mouse. So if we select all of these foregrounds and we just say change the layer mode from normal to lighten, it will instantly give us an idea of what it's going to make this look like by the time we have selected those parts of the foreground that we want to keep. So what I'm going to do, we're going to go through these one by one, and I'll speed this process up somewhat. So what we're seeing now is this top layer here, over and above our background sky that is down at the bottom. If I turn it off, you can see that's our original background. And now we've got the lighter parts of the top layer, this top layer, are now being shown because we've got the lighten mode on here. And so what we can do is we can now click on the mask there, and we can brush in or out parts of it that we don't want. So we're going to make this image a bit smaller now, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to choose a lower opacity of something like about 50%, flow of about 50%, and it's a bit bright here, and so we're just going to take that brightness down a bit by applying a little bit of black to that. and because it was a bit hot there, and just instantly just takes that down. So let's see what's on the next layer, layer number 2 here. Turn it off and on, and you can see it's just bringing in a little bit of this foreground here, and I don't think I need to do much to that. That's a bit hot, that's a bit bright, and there's an area over here that I definitely want to take out. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make, again, make sure I'm making my adjustments just to the layer mask here. So this is all a bit hot, so a bit bright, so we're just going to take some of that down a bit. And for this bit we're going to take that out completely, so I need to change my brush here to a hard brush, so we're going to increase the opacity to 100%, the flow to 100%, and I'm just going to change the size down, and we're just going to take out that. We don't want it, don't need it, and it's gone. There we go. Next layer. Okay, way too bright that. So which bits is it affecting? So we've got a little bit here we need to get rid of. Oh, did that wrong, need to do that on the layer mask. So let's get rid of that. And that's just way too bright. So let's use our mid-range opacity and flow. We'll make it a reasonable size again, and we're just going to take that down. In fact, it's so bright, I think what we're going to do is we're going to take that one out. We don't want that, so let's just get rid of that. We don't have to use that layer. And so we're just going to keep going through and choosing those parts of this image that we want to keep. So let's choose high level opacity and flow, and we'll get rid of that. There's quite a bit of feathering going on there as well. And what you'll start to see is that I'm just picking and choosing those parts of the image that I really don't want. I think we'll just get rid of everything that's in the doorway there, but we'll keep this section here. I quite like that on the buttress. Right, so we've got another bit here that we want to get rid of. Oh, need to do that on the mask. Mask, get rid. It's got to go. Okay, there's some little red in there. I want to get rid of that as well. This is a bit hot, so let's take the opacity down and the flow down. And we'll go up a size again, and we'll just take a little bit of that off. You get the idea that we're just going to go through here. Actually, this is a bit hot here, so I want to find out which one that's on. I think it might be the second layer or the first layer. No. Okay, so it's that layer there, I think. So we're just going to soften that a bit as well. Okay, that's better. And so you get an idea of the process. We just go into each of these layers one at a time and work out, is that something that I do or do not want to keep? And if I do, and if it's a bit hot, then I might want to adjust how it looks. Opacity up again on that one and on that one. And let's just take out this torch light here. And I could go through each of these layers one at a time, working out which bits I do and don't want to keep. I think I'll make this the last one, because I think by now you'll have got the idea. Just sort of gradually go through these layers one at a time and work out, okay, what parts of this are actually going to really help this image. And so at this point it really starts to become a matter of your interpreting what it is that you have shot. And Richard Tatty says, you know, this is where art really meets photography, because this is your interpretation of the scene. And think of these as like paint strokes, or brush strokes, if you like, that an artist might be applying to their canvas. There's no right and no wrong way to do this. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to flatten this image, get rid of all of those things that I've saved there. We'll just discard all of the hidden layers and everything. We'll just take it down to one, otherwise it's going to be a huge file. We're going to click save. It's going to save it back into Lightroom, and then we can make any final adjustments we might want to make in Lightroom. So let's go back there. And this is, I believe, yeah, this is it. This is the image that we have just been creating. And we'll go into the develop module. And now we can do to this image, with the sky here and the foreground, all of the things that we could normally do to the images that we started with. So if we want to push this Milky Way a little bit further, we can do that. It's up to us. So we can choose masks here. We can say, okay, let's select sky again. We've been here before, haven't we? Right, so mask, subtract, select sky, invert. I've now just got the sky, and similar to before, I can say, okay, yeah, we'll just have a bit more contrast now. We'll have a little bit more in the way of whites. Take down the highlights. You know, this is all starting to look a bit familiar, hopefully. And I'm actually quite happy with the, at the moment, with the white balance. That might change by the time I've added a bit more clarity, a little bit more texture. You don't want to go too far with any of these small little changes. And again, I don't really want it to make that adjustment there, so we're going to intersect this with a linear gradient, going somewhere like that. Just drag it down there a bit. Okay, so none of those changes I just made will affect this part of the image. Okay, and again, we might just give it a little bit of a tone curve, not too much because it's going to look a bit daft if we do. Just a little bit there, a little bit up there. Okay, so that Milky Way is really beginning to pop now. Let's also, if we wanted to, we can just say go back to here, and we could try and make this histogram a little less dominated by the greens there if we wanted, so we could give it a bit more magenta. So what I'm trying to do is just close up this histogram. I actually quite like that. It's quite a colourful sky now. Right, so let's go back to our masks, and we'll tell it to select sky. And we're just going to invert that so that I'm just dealing with the foreground here. I think that's close enough for this purpose. And we can make, again, adjustments that we want here. We can fiddle with the, if we wanted a bit less warm tones or a bit more warm tones, we can do that. There's a little bit of magenta here I don't really want, so maybe we could make that a little bit more green. Okay, I don't really want to do an awful lot to this. Shadows up, highlights down, let's just make it a little less hot in places. And you can fiddle around with these to your heart's content, but hopefully you get the idea there. So, you know, we've gone from what looks like there's almost no data available for us to work with there, all the way through to this beautiful coloured sky. So how do we sum that up? To get there, we took our basic images, which were just like this, and I took 15 of those. Before I made some basic adjustments to things like exposure, clarity, contrast, bit of dehaze, Sent them over to Starry Landscape Stacker. We brought them back in. I made a few more adjustments. We sent that lot over to Photoshop together with the foregrounds that I had light painted with different settings. We applied a mask to isolate the sky as our background, and then we applied an invert version of that mask to each of the foregrounds, so that we could then choose which bits of which foregrounds we wanted to include within our final image that ended up looking like, if I can find the mouse, looking like this one. And I've got to say, I'm actually pretty pleased with that process, and I'm pretty pleased that I've been able to replicate reliably the process that I went through getting there. It shows that it's not just a complete one-off fluke. I hope that has been helpful. This would probably now been a ridiculously long video, so I'm just going to tie it up now. And thank you very much for watching. I hope it's been useful. If it has, please just let me know in the comments, and if you'd like to see more content like this, then do let me know, and I'll be very happy to do that if enough people say, yeah, we want to see more. Okay, bye for now.